I'm done playing your games, Marilyn. You want to trap me with this baby? Not happening. Get out of my house. Go scream somewhere else. I don't care if you deliver on the street. You're nothing to me now. Betty is waiting, and unlike you, she knows how to make a man happy. Get out. Those were the vicious words Nathan Rivera spat at his wife while labor pains tore through her body. Instead of holding her hand, he threw her into the streets. Instead of love, he gave her humiliation and abandonment at her most vulnerable moment. He thought he had destroyed her spirit forever, leaving her to suffer alone like she was worthless. But what he never imagined was that the same woman he cast out in agony would one day rise in a way that would shake his world to its core. A rise that would not only strip him of everything he valued, but expose the lies he built his new life upon. Sometimes the ones you discard return with power you cannot imagine. Sometimes the woman you thought would disappear in shame becomes the one whose shadow swallows your entire world. This is the story of Marilyn Martin, a woman betrayed at her most vulnerable, who rose to heights no one could deny. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps us share voices that would otherwise be silenced. Every time you click that button, you're helping stories of survival and triumph reach those who need them most. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story touched you. The first contraction hit like lightning, splitting her body in half. Marilyn Martin gripped the kitchen counter, her knuckles going white. "Nathan," she called out, her voice strained. "Nathan, please. It's time. The baby's coming." He stood in the living room doorway, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something the person on the other end said. He glanced at her, not with concern, but with irritation. Like she was interrupting something important. "Now?" he said, his voice flat. "Of course it would be now." "Please," Marilyn breathed, her hand moving to her swollen belly. "We need to go to the hospital. My bag is by the door. Just help me to the car." Nathan's expression hardened. His jaw clenched. "Help you? After everything you've put me through?" "No." She blinked, confusion cutting through the pain. "What do you mean, no?" He stepped closer, and his voice dropped into something cold and cruel. "You don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to trap me with tears and timing. I'm done." Another contraction seized her body. She doubled over, gasping, reaching for anything to steady herself. "Nathan, I'm in labor. This isn't about control. I'm having our baby." He laughed, actually laughed. "Our baby? You mean your trap. Your way to keep me chained to this miserable life." Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Marilyn looked up, and there she was. Betty Flores stood in the doorway wearing that red dress, the one that hugged every curve, the one that screamed confidence and victory. Her arms were crossed, a slight smirk playing at her lips. She looked at Marilyn the way someone looks at something broken beyond repair. Nathan turned to Betty, his entire demeanor shifting. Softer. Warmer. Everything Marilyn used to get. "Betty's waiting for me," Nathan said, turning back to Marilyn. "Unlike you, she knows how to make a man happy. She doesn't suffocate. She doesn't manipulate. She doesn't trap." Marilyn's legs trembled. Another wave of pain crashed through her. "Nathan, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this." "Get out," he roared, pointing at the door. "Get out of my house. Take your screaming and your drama somewhere else. I don't care if you deliver on the street. You're nothing to me now. Nothing." Betty's smirk widened. And in that moment, as Marilyn stood there, alone, abandoned in the worst pain of her life, She understood something her father once told her. Baby girl, the people who underestimate you give you the greatest weapon, their ignorance. Nathan didn't know about the $30 million. He didn't know about the trust. He didn't know that while he was throwing her away, he was sealing his own fate. But he would learn. Oh, he would learn. The pot of pasta water boiled over just as the first contraction hit. Marilyn gasped, gripping the counter's edge, her other hand instinctively moving to her belly. The pain radiated from her lower back, wrapping around her middle like a vice tightening with each second. "Nathan," she called out, her voice strained but steady. "Nathan, honey, it's time. The baby's coming." From the living room, she heard his laugh, light, carefree, the kind of laugh he used to give her. But it wasn't for her anymore. He was on the phone, his voice animated in a way it hadn't been with her in months. "Handle it yourself," he said without looking up. "I have plans." Marilyn turned off the stove, her hands trembling. Another contraction built, faster than the last. She steadied her breathing, counting the way the birthing class instructor had taught her. 3 minutes. Maybe less. "Nathan, please." Her voice cracked. "We need to go to the hospital. I can't do this alone." He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her stomach drop. Not concern. Not love. Contempt. "That's your problem, Marilyn. You always need something. You're always clinging, always demanding. I'm suffocating." He stood, his phone still in his hand. "I can't do this anymore." "I'm having our baby," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Right now. I need you." "No." He stepped closer, his face hard. "You need to stop trying to control me with this guilt trip. I'm done." That's when she appeared. Betty Flores stood in the hallway doorway, arms crossed, wearing that red dress that clung to her like a second skin. Her expression wasn't sympathetic or even neutral. It was satisfied. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Marilyn's breath caught. "Betty? What is she?" "Get out," Nathan said, his voice deadly calm now. "I don't care where you go. Die on the street for all I care. This is my house. You're not wanted here." "Nathan, please." Marilyn reached for him, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn him. "I said get out." He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. Not gently. Not carefully. Like she was an obstacle to remove. Marilyn stumbled, another contraction ripping through her. She cried out, but Nathan didn't stop. He opened the front door and pushed her onto the porch. "Wait, my bag, the hospital." The door slammed in her face. Marilyn stood there, stunned, her body shaking. Contractions were coming every 3 minutes now. The night air was cold against her thin sweater. Across the street, a neighbor's light flickered on. She saw the curtain twitch, a silhouette behind it. But the light went off. No one came. She fumbled for her phone with trembling fingers and called a cab. "Please," she whispered when the dispatcher answered. "I'm in labor. I need to get to Memorial Hospital." 10 minutes, ma'am. Hang tight." 10 minutes felt like forever. She leaned against the porch railing, breathing through another wave of agony. When she looked up at the window, she saw them. Nathan and Betty, their bodies pressed together, his hands in her hair, kissing like Marilyn had never existed. Like their baby didn't exist. The cab's headlights cut through the darkness. "You okay, Mama?" the driver asked as Marilyn climbed into the back seat, her face wet with tears and sweat. "Just drive," she whispered. "Please." "I'll get you there, Mama. Hold on." At the hospital, the admissions nurse barely looked up from her computer. "Name? Insurance?" Any support person coming? No, Marilyn said, her voice hollow. Just me. The nurse's expression softened slightly. Let's get you to a room. Labor was a blur of fluorescent lights and burning pain. But through it all, there was Nurse Thompson, a woman with kind eyes and strong hands who never left her side. You're not alone, Nurse Thompson said, gripping Marilyn's hand as another contraction peaked. I'm here. I've got you. When Marilyn screamed, it wasn't just from the physical pain. It was from the heartbreak, the betrayal, the crushing weight of being thrown away at her most vulnerable moment. One more push, the doctor said. Come on, Marilyn. Your baby's almost here. And then, a cry. Small, fierce, perfect. It's a girl, the nurse announced, placing the tiny wriggling baby on Marilyn's chest. Marilyn sobbed, holding her daughter close. I'm so sorry, she whispered against the baby's wet head. I'm so sorry you were born into this. But I promise I'll protect you. No matter what it takes. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Through blurred vision, she read the message from Betty's number. He's mine now. Focus on your little problem. You were never enough for him. Marilyn stared at her daughter's peaceful face, eyes closed, tiny fist curled against her chest. Something hardened inside her. Something cold and sharp and unbreakable. One day, she whispered, her voice steady now, they'll regret this. I swear it. The shelter had one computer for 20 women, and Marilyn only got 15 minutes. She bounced her 3-week-old daughter against her shoulder while scrolling through Facebook on a borrowed phone. The screen cracked across the corner. Nathan's post sat at the top of her feed, posted 2 days after he'd thrown her out. Sometimes you have to walk away from toxicity to save yourself. Starting a new chapter with someone who truly supports me. The photo showed him smiling, genuinely smiling, his arm around Betty at some waterfront restaurant Marilyn had always wanted to try. The comments section was a knife twisting in her chest. You deserve happiness. So proud of you for choosing yourself. What happened with your ex? I heard she was crazy. Stay strong, brother. Toxic women will drain you dry. Marilyn's thumb hovered over the screen, her vision blurring. She scrolled down. Betty had posted too. The photo was of their living room, Marilyn's living room, the one she'd decorated, where she'd hung curtains she'd sewn herself. Betty stood in the center, that red dress replaced by casual jeans and Nathan's shirt, smiling like she owned everything. The caption read, "Home is where love lives." Marilyn's baby whimpered. She closed the browser and handed the phone back to the woman beside her. She said nothing. What was there to say? At the Riverside Country Club, Betty dabbed her lips with a linen napkin and leaned toward the women at her table. The luncheon was in full swing, champagne, finger sandwiches, society wives trading secrets like currency. I shouldn't talk about it, Betty said, her voice low enough to draw them closer. But Nathan's been through hell. She was violent. He has scars. She paused, letting the silence do its work. He was terrified of her, honestly. The mood swings, the accusations. He stayed as long as he could for the baby's sake. The women gasped softly, exchanging glances. Poor Nathan, one of them murmured. He always seemed so steady. He is, Betty said, smiling. Now that he's free. At Rivera and Associates, Nathan's colleague leaned against the break room counter, coffee in hand. I heard she threw things during arguments, he said to another architect. Plates, books, whatever she could reach. Threatened him too. Jesus. How'd he put up with it? He didn't. Finally got out. Good for him. Neither of them questioned it. Why would they? Nathan was successful, respected, and the woman in question was nowhere to be found to defend herself. At the grocery store, Marilyn stood in the formula aisle, her daughter strapped to her chest in a second-hand carrier. She reached for the cheapest brand, calculating how many days it would last. "That's her." The whisper came from 2 aisles over, but it carried. Marilyn froze. The unstable one? The one Nathan left. "Yeah. I heard she had a breakdown. Tried to trap him with the baby." Marilyn's hands trembled as she placed the formula in her basket. She didn't turn around. Didn't defend herself. She just walked to the register, paid with crumpled bills, and left. The cashier didn't meet her eyes. That night, alone in the shelter's narrow cot, Marilyn called Aunt Diane. Her daughter slept against her chest, tiny breaths warm against her collarbone. "Aunt Diane, it's me. I need help. Just a place to stay for a few weeks while I get on my feet." There was a long pause. Too long. "Marilyn." Aunt Diane's voice was careful, measured. "Nathan called me." Marilyn's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He said you've been having episodes. That you're not stable right now. Maybe you need professional help, honey. For the baby's sake." "I'm not crazy." Marilyn's voice broke. "He abandoned me during labor. He threw me out while I was in pain. I delivered our baby alone." "I'm sure it felt that way to you," Aunt Diane said, her tone maddeningly calm. "But there are 2 sides to every story, Marilyn. I can't get involved in this. I'm sorry." The line went dead. Marilyn stared at the phone, her chest tight. Her own family. Her own blood. They believed him. 2 months later, the announcement appeared in the society pages of the newspaper. Marilyn found it left behind on a bench at the bus stop. Rivera and Associates principal architect Nathan Rivera announces engagement to public relations executive Betty Flores. The photo showed them at a charity gala, Nathan in a tuxedo, Betty in an emerald gown, both of them glowing. The article quoted Nathan, "After a difficult first marriage, I've finally found my true partner. Someone who supports my dreams and understands me." There were more photos inside. Dinner at Lou Bernardine. Front row seats at the opera. A weekend in the Hamptons. Every image was a life Marilyn had imagined for herself, now given to someone else. That night, back in the shelter, Marilyn rocked her crying daughter. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone's TV blared through the thin walls. Her baby wouldn't stop crying, and Marilyn was so tired she could barely see straight. She stared at the ceiling, her jaw clenched, her heart a stone. They had taken everything. Her home. Her reputation. Her family. Her dignity. But they hadn't taken the one thing that mattered. She looked down at her daughter's red, tear-streaked face and whispered, "They think they've won. But they have no idea what's coming." The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned. Marilyn stood in the doorway, her daughter in her arms, and surveyed what would be home. 1 room. A kitchenette with a hot plate and a sink that dripped rust-colored water. A bathroom so small she could touch both walls at once. The ceiling had a brown stain that spread like a map, and even now, she could see moisture gathering at its edges. The heating rattled and coughed but produced no warmth. "It's $300 a month," the landlord said, not looking at her. "First and last, plus deposit. Cash only." Marilyn counted out the bills she'd saved from the shelter's job placement program. Her hands shook as she handed them over. That night, she lined a dresser drawer with blankets and a pillow, creating a makeshift bassinet. Her daughter slept there, tiny fists curled near her face, while Marilyn sat on the floor and cried as quietly as she could. Outside, Kids shouted and played even though it was past midnight. A car alarm wailed. Then a sound that made her freeze, a gunshot, distant but unmistakable. She crawled to the drawer and placed her hand on her daughter's chest, feeling the steady rise and fall. "This is temporary," she whispered. "I promise you. This is temporary." The first house she cleaned belonged to a woman who watched her like a hawk. Marilyn scrubbed the marble floors on her hands and knees, her back aching, while the woman stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. "Don't use too much water," the woman said sharply. "You people always do. It leaves streaks." Marilyn bit the inside of her cheek and wrung out the mop. At the second house, she cleaned the living room while the client talked on the phone in the kitchen, her voice carrying easily. "You heard about Nathan Rivera's ex-wife, right? Apparently she's working as a maid now. Can you imagine? I heard she was obsessed with him. Completely unhinged." Marilyn kept scrubbing. She didn't stop. She didn't cry. She just scrubbed until the baseboards gleamed. At the diner, the lunch shift was the worst. Marilyn balanced plates, refilled coffee, smiled at customers who didn't look at her face. Her feet throbbed in shoes that were a size too small. Then they walked in. Two women from her old neighborhood, the kind who used to invite her to book club and yoga classes. They spotted her immediately. "Oh my God," one of them said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "Look. It's Marilyn. From designer bags to serving fries. Karma's real, isn't it?" They laughed, high and sharp. Marilyn walked to their table, order pad in hand, her face a mask. "What can I get you?" "2 coffees," the first woman said, smirking. "And make sure they're hot. You can manage that, right?" Marilyn wrote it down with a steady hand. "Anything else?" "That'll be all." She brought them their coffee. She didn't spill a drop. And when they left a single dollar bill as a tip on a $30 check, she pocketed it without flinching. At night, she worked at the dry cleaner doing alterations. The shop owner paid her under the table, $7 an hour to hem pants and take in dresses. Her fingers bled from needle pricks. Her eyes burned from the fluorescent lights. One night, she fell asleep at the sewing machine, her cheek pressed against the fabric. She woke to the owner shaking her shoulder. "Go home, Marilyn. You're no good to me." Exhausted. At the laundromat, Marilyn folded her daughter's tiny onesies while the machines churned. A woman 2 tables over spoke loudly to her friend, glancing at Marilyn every few seconds. "I heard she stalked him after he left. Showed up at his office screaming, throwing things. The police had to escort her out." Marilyn's hands stilled for just a moment. Then she continued folding. At the pharmacy, she placed diapers and formula on the counter. The cashier looked at her, then looked again, recognition dawning. "You're that woman," he said. "From the news. The one who lost it with her husband." Marilyn pulled crumpled bills from her pocket and counted them out. $12.37. Exact change. "Have a nice day," she said quietly, taking the bag. She walked out into the cold without looking back. That night, after her daughter finally fell asleep, Marilyn sat on the floor in the dark. Every muscle ached. Her hands were raw. She was so tired she felt hollowed out. She reached under the mattress and pulled out a small leather portfolio, worn at the edges. Her father had given it to her years ago with strict instructions. "Don't open this unless you absolutely need it. And don't tell anyone. Not even your husband." She'd opened it once, right after he died. And she'd hidden it ever since. Inside were legal documents, her father's elegant signature at the bottom. Trust documents. Investment statements. And at the top of one page, a number that made her breath catch even now. $30 million. Her father, quiet, brilliant, strategic, had built an empire in commercial real estate and protected her with an ironclad trust that activated only after his death. Nathan had never known. He'd married her thinking her father would make him an heir, never realizing the money was untouchable. Marilyn traced the numbers with her finger, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Not yet, Daddy," she whispered into the darkness. "But soon. Very soon." Outside, a siren wailed. Her daughter stirred but didn't wake. Marilyn closed the portfolio and slid it back under the mattress. Then she lay down on the thin blanket and stared at the stained ceiling, her jaw set, her eyes hard. They thought she was broken. They had no idea she was just getting started. The bus ride took an hour and 15 minutes. Marilyn sat in the back, her daughter asleep in the carrier against her chest, and watched the city transform through the window. Broken sidewalks gave way to manicured lawns. Graffiti-tagged buildings became glass towers that reflected the sky. Hawthorne and Associates occupied the 23rd floor of a building downtown. The lobby was all marble and soft lighting, the kind of place where Marilyn used to belong. The receptionist looked at her twice, once at her face, once at her worn coat, before asking if she had an appointment. "David Hawthorne is expecting me," Marilyn said quietly. The woman's expression shifted. "Of course. Right this way." David Hawthorne was a tall man with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing. He'd been her father's attorney for 20 years, his friend for longer. When Marilyn entered his office, he stood immediately and came around the desk. "Marilyn." His voice was warm but edged with concern. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." She sat down carefully, her daughter still sleeping against her. "Thank you for seeing me. Your father made me promise to look after you if anything happened to him." Hawthorne returned to his chair. "That trust he set up, it was specifically designed to protect you from people like Nathan. He saw that boy coming from a mile away." Marilyn's throat tightened. "Nathan doesn't know about it?" "Not a penny. Your father structured it so that it activated only after his death, with you as the sole beneficiary. Nathan has no claim, no access, no legal avenue. It's airtight." "Good." Marilyn met his eyes. "Because I want to use it. Not for luxury. For justice." Hawthorne leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to buy Nathan's company," she said. "Quietly. Anonymously. Until I own it." A slow smile spread across Hawthorne's face. "Your father would be very proud." Over the next hour, they mapped it out. Hawthorne explained the structure: shell companies layered through Delaware LLCs, anonymous trusts, intermediaries who would never reveal their client. "We'll make offers through proxies," he said. "Above market value but not suspiciously so. No one will trace it back to you." "How long will it take?" Marilyn asked. 6 months. Maybe less. Rivera and Associates isn't as stable as it looks. Nathan's been riding on reputation, but the foundation is shaky. Partners are getting nervous. Marilyn's expression didn't change. "Then we start today." Hawthorne extended his hand. "Consider it done." Within 2 weeks, the first offers arrived at Rivera and Associates. Anonymous investors interested in purchasing shares. The prices were generous, 10, sometimes 15% above market value. Nathan's senior partner, Gerald Moss, knocked on his office door. "We've got another offer. This one's for my entire stake." Nathan looked up from his drafting table. "Who's buying?" "Don't know. They're using intermediaries. But the money's real." How many offers is that now? 7. 3 partners have already sold. Nathan's jaw tightened. Who's buying? And why? His assistant appeared in the doorway. Sir, we've tried to trace the purchases. Every lead ends at a different LLC. Whoever it is, they know how to stay hidden. Find out, Nathan snapped. Someone's targeting me. But there was nothing to find. Just clean transactions, legal documents, and money that moved through channels no one could untangle. Then the contracts started disappearing. The Riverside Hotel project, 3 years in development, went to another firm. The downtown plaza redesign, the one Nathan had been salivating over, awarded to a competitor. We're going with another architect, the client said over the phone. Sorry, Nathan. They made a better offer. Nathan slammed the phone down. He poured himself a drink even though it was 2 in the afternoon. When Betty walked in, he didn't look up. Another one? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. They're stealing my clients. Someone's paying them to walk. Betty watched him down the scotch, watched his hands shake slightly as he poured another. She thought of Marcus Whitmore's text from that morning. Still with the sinking ship? Maybe it's just bad luck, she said. Nathan's laugh was bitter. There's no such thing as coincidence in this business. Betty excused herself and went to the bedroom. She locked the door and called Marcus. You're still with Nathan? Marcus asked when he picked up. Not for long, Betty said, keeping her voice low. But while I am, I can give you what you need to bury him. Client lists. Contracts. Financials. What's your price? A place in your world when his crumbles. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then deal. They shook hands over lunch 3 days later at a restaurant Nathan would never go to. Betty wore sunglasses and a scarf. Marcus wore a smile that promised everything Nathan couldn't deliver anymore. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, Marcus said, signing the contract that made her his director of business development. I'm a survivor, Betty corrected. There's a difference. Back at the penthouse, Nathan paced in front of the windows, phone pressed to his ear, arguing with another partner who wanted to sell. He didn't notice Betty in the doorway, watching him with the same cold calculation she'd once turned on Marilyn. Across town, Marilyn sat in Hawthorne's office, reviewing acquisition reports. They now owned 43% of Rivera and Associates. 2 more partners were considering offers. We're close, Hawthorne said. Another month, maybe 6 weeks. Marilyn looked at the documents, her daughter asleep in a portable crib beside her chair. She thought of the dresser drawer bassinet, the bleeding fingers, the women who'd laughed at her serving fries. Is there a charity gala coming up? She asked. Something Nathan would attend? Hawthorne checked his calendar. The Riverside Foundation Gala. 8 weeks from now. Nathan and Betty are listed as guests of honor. Marilyn smiled. It was not a kind smile. Perfect, she said. That's where we'll do it. The new apartment had windows that let in actual sunlight. Marilyn stood in the living room on her first morning there, her daughter on her hip, and watched dust motes dance in the golden light. The walls were freshly painted. The heating worked. There was a separate bedroom with a real crib, not a dresser drawer. She quit the cleaning job first, calling the agency and simply saying, I won't be back. Then the diner. Then the dry cleaner. No explanations. No apologies. At a boutique in Midtown, she bought 3 simple dresses, nothing flashy, but well-made, elegant. The salesperson noticed. You have excellent taste, she said, and Marilyn realized it had been months since anyone had spoken to her with basic respect. When she walked down the street now, her shoulders were back, her head high. People noticed. In the coffee shop, a woman whispered to her companion, "She looks different. Confident." Marilyn heard it and kept walking, a small smile playing at her lips. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Aunt Diane's name flashed on Marilyn's phone. She let it ring 3 times before answering. "Marilyn," Aunt Diane said, her voice bright, warm. "I heard you're doing better. I'm so glad, honey. Maybe we could have lunch? Catch up." Marilyn's voice was ice. "Why?" "What do you mean, why?" "Your family." "Family." Marilyn repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "You called me unstable. You told me there were 2 sides to every story when I begged you for help. You chose his side." "Marilyn, I was trying to help. You seemed lost, and Nathan was so concerned." "No." Marilyn cut her off. "You weren't trying to help me. You were trying to stay comfortable. You didn't want the mess, so you believed his lies. And now that you've heard I'm doing better, suddenly I'm family again. That's not fair." "I don't need you now, Aunt Diane. I didn't need you then, but I wanted you. There's a difference. Goodbye." She hung up before her aunt could respond. 2 days later, her cousin Marcus called. "Hey, Marilyn. Long time. Listen, I'm in a bit of a bind. Could you loan me a few thousand? Just until I get back on my feet. Family helps family, right?" Marilyn's laugh was cold. "You testified against me in court. You told the judge I had violent outbursts. Nathan paid you $5,000. I have the receipts, Marcus. Bank statements. Text messages. Everything." Silence. Then stammering. I didn't mean, it wasn't like that." "Yes, it was. It was exactly like that. You sold me out for money while I was sleeping in a shelter with my newborn daughter. So no, Marcus. Family doesn't help family. Not anymore. Goodbye." She blocked his number. That evening, Hawthorne called. Marilyn was feeding her daughter when the phone rang, and something in the lawyer's voice made her set the bottle down. "Marilyn," he said, "we've acquired 51%. You're the majority shareholder of Rivera and Associates." Marilyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. For a moment, she was back in that hospital room, alone, screaming through labor while Nathan kissed Betty in their living room. Then she opened her eyes. That woman was gone. This woman was someone new. "It's time then," she said quietly. "The board meets next week. We can remove Nathan as CEO quietly if you prefer. Minimal drama." "No." Marilyn's voice was firm. "Not quietly. Is there a gala coming up? Something public?" She heard papers rustling. The Riverside Foundation Charity Gala. 2 weeks from Saturday. Nathan and Betty are listed as guests of honor. Marilyn smiled. "Perfect. That's where we do it." "Are you sure?" "It'll be very public." "I'm sure. He humiliated me publicly. He gets the same." "I'll make the arrangements." The boutique was high-end, the kind of place Marilyn used to shop before Nathan threw her out. She tried on 6 gowns before finding the one. Midnight blue, elegant lines, nothing ostentatious but undeniably powerful. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone Nathan wouldn't recognize. Someone stronger. Someone dangerous. "That's the one," the consultant said. "You look stunning." At home that night, Marilyn stood in front of her bathroom mirror and practiced. "Good evening. I apologize for the interruption, but there's an announcement that cannot wait." Her voice was steady, clear. She practiced it again and again, until every word was a weapon sharpened to perfection. Her daughter cried from the nursery. Marilyn went to her, lifted her from the crib, and sat in the rocking chair by the window. The city lights spread out below them like stars. "Tomorrow, baby girl," she whispered, stroking her daughter's soft hair. "Tomorrow the world changes. Tomorrow they learn that the woman they threw away became the woman they can never escape." Her daughter's eyes drifted closed, her small hand wrapped around Marilyn's finger. Marilyn looked out at the city, at the lights, at the buildings where Nathan probably slept soundly, where Betty probably planned her next move, where people who'd whispered about her probably never thought of her at all. "They have no idea what's coming," she said softly. "But they will. Very soon they will." She rocked her daughter and waited for morning, her heart steady, her mind clear, every piece of her plan locked into place like armor. The game was almost over. And Marilyn had already won. The Riverside Foundation ballroom looked like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it across vaulted ceilings. An orchestra played softly from a raised platform. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd with champagne that cost more per glass than Marilyn used to make in a day. Nathan and Betty arrived fashionably late, exactly as planned. Photographers swarmed them at the entrance, cameras flashing like lightning. "Mr. Rivera. Ms. Flores. Over here." "Nathan, how does it feel to be honored tonight?" "Betty, you look stunning." Betty wore red. The same shade as that night in the hospital doorway, the same cut that hugged her body like a declaration of victory. She posed with one hand on her hip, smiling at the cameras like she owned the room. Nathan stood beside her in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his arm around her waist. He gave interviews with easy confidence, his voice carrying across the marble entryway. "Success is about perseverance," he said to a reporter. "It's about recognizing what's holding you back and having the courage to walk away. Never let negativity define your path." The reporter ate it up. "Inspiring words, Mr. Rivera." Inside the ballroom, they moved through the crowd like royalty. Old colleagues shook Nathan's hand. Society wives complimented Betty's dress. They posed for more photos, their smiles bright and perfect. Then Nathan was called to the stage. The MC introduced him as a visionary architect who's overcome tremendous personal challenges to build not just buildings, but a legacy. The applause was thunderous. Nathan took the microphone, letting the moment wash over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice humble but proud. "Tonight is about more than me. It's about what we can all achieve when we refuse to be dragged down by toxic circumstances." He paused, letting the words sink in. Sometimes the hardest thing in life is leaving behind relationships that drain you. Toxic partnerships that make you question yourself. But I'm here to tell you, on the other side of that pain is freedom. Is clarity. Is the chance to build something real with someone who truly supports your vision. He looked at Betty in the front row. She beamed at him, her eyes glistening with what looked like tears. "I'm grateful for new beginnings," Nathan continued. "For the courage to embrace happiness. And for all of you who stood by me through difficult times." The crowd rose to their feet, applauding. Nathan felt invincible. He felt justified. He felt like every choice he'd made had been vindicated by this moment. Then, mid-applause, the orchestra stopped. The conductor's baton froze mid-air. The violins went silent. The applause faltered, then died completely. A hush fell over the ballroom like a curtain dropping. Nathan looked around, confused. The MC looked at the orchestra, then at someone in the back. Every head in the room began to turn toward the grand staircase at the entrance. And there she was. Marilyn stood at the top of the stairs, backlit by the soft glow of the sconces. Her midnight blue gown shimmered like water, elegant and understated but absolutely commanding. Her natural hair was styled in soft curls that framed her face. Her makeup was subtle, just enough to highlight her striking features. And at her ears, diamond studs caught the light with every slight movement. Her father's gift, given to her on her 21st birthday. She began to descend. Every step was deliberate, measured, powerful. She didn't hurry. She didn't hesitate. She simply walked like someone who knew exactly where she belonged. The whispers started immediately. "Is that Marilyn Martin? Oh my God, she looks incredible. What is she doing here? I thought she looks like she owns the place." Nathan's champagne glass trembled in his hand. The liquid sloshed against the rim but didn't spill. His face went pale, then flushed red. Betty's smile froze on her face. Slowly, like ice cracking, it faded into something closer to panic. She stood, her hand gripping the back of her chair. Marilyn reached the bottom of the stairs and walked through the parted crowd. People stepped back instinctively, creating a path straight to the stage. She didn't look left or right. She looked only forward, at Nathan, standing frozen behind the microphone. The MC, a thin man in his 60s, stepped forward nervously. "Ms. Martin, I don't think you're on the—" Marilyn reached the stage steps and climbed them with the same measured grace. She took the microphone from the MC's hand, not roughly, but firmly enough that he released it without protest. "Good evening," she said, her voice clear and calm, amplified across the silent ballroom. "I apologize for the interruption, but there's an announcement that cannot wait." Nathan found his voice. He tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. "Marilyn, this isn't appropriate." Marilyn's eyes locked onto his. The room seemed to shrink until it was just the two of them, predator and prey. "Sit down, Nathan," she said quietly. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it. His legs seemed to give out slightly. He took a step back. The room was so silent that the sound of Betty's heel scraping against the floor echoed like a gunshot. Every eye was on Marilyn. Every breath held. Every heart waiting to see what would happen next. Marilyn stood in the center of the stage, the microphone in her hand, her midnight blue gown catching the light, her father's diamonds glinting at her ears. And she smiled. Marilyn stood at the center of the stage, the microphone steady in her hand, and looked out at the sea of faces. Some she recognized. Some had whispered about her. Some had believed every lie. "Many of you know me," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "Or you think you do. You heard I was unstable. Dangerous. A failed wife who couldn't hold her marriage together. Tonight, you'll learn who I really am." She pulled a small remote from a hidden pocket in her gown and clicked it once. Screens descended from the ceiling on both sides of the stage, smooth and silent. The Rivera and Associates logo appeared, bold, prestigious, the symbol of Nathan's success. "For 6 months," Marilyn continued, "an anonymous investor has been acquiring shares in this company. Making offers the partners couldn't refuse. Moving through channels no one could trace. Tonight, that investor reveals themselves." She clicked the remote again. The screens changed. Corporate documents appeared, clean and official, with one name highlighted in bold: Marilyn Martin, majority shareholder. "I am the majority shareholder of Rivera and Associates," Marilyn said, each word measured and clear. "Effective tomorrow morning, Nathan Rivera is removed as CEO and principal architect." The room erupted. Gasps turned to shouts. Camera flashes lit up like fireworks. People stood, craning to see the screens, to see Nathan's face, to see if this was real. Nathan rushed forward, his face twisted in disbelief. That's impossible. You don't have money. You're lying. This is insane. Marilyn's voice cut through the chaos like ice. My father left me $30 million in an ironclad trust. You married me thinking you'd control it, thinking you'd become an heir. You never could. You never had access to a single cent. Nathan stumbled, gripping the edge of the stage. Your father, but he promised me. He said nothing, Marilyn interrupted. He made no promises. Because he knew men like you existed. Men who marry for money, not love. And he protected me. Nathan's mouth opened and closed. No words came. Marilyn clicked the remote again. Emails filled the screens. Nathan's emails, pulled from his company server, time-stamped and verified. Once we're married, I'll have access to her father's estate. The old man's loaded. This is the smartest investment I'll ever make. She's emotional and easy to manipulate. I'll have everything locked down within a year. She won't even see it coming. If the trust is separate property, I'll push for a mental health diagnosis. Make her look unstable. Judges love that angle. The crowd's murmurs turned to disgust. Someone in the back yelled, he used her. Another voice, this whole marriage was a con. Nathan's face went crimson. Those are fake. Doctored. She's fabricated all of this. A man in a dark suit stepped forward from the side of the stage. David Hawthorne, distinguished and unshakable, his voice calm and authoritative. These emails were pulled directly from your company server, Mr. Rivera. They've been authenticated by 3 independent forensic experts. Every word is yours. Nathan staggered backward, his hand reaching for something to steady himself. Marilyn wasn't finished. But Nathan wasn't the only one playing games, she said, her eyes moving to Betty, who stood frozen in the front row, her red dress suddenly looking garish under the lights. Marilyn clicked the remote. New messages appeared. Betty's text messages, screenshots time-stamped and clear. To Marcus Whitmore, Nathan's company is vulnerable. I'll give you the client list and contract details if you guarantee me a position when his firm collapses. To a friend, I'm not staying with Nathan. He's just a stepping stone. Marcus is where the real money is. To Nathan, while engaged, you're so much better than her. She never deserved you. Below that message, a timestamp, sent 9:47 a.m., the same day she first met Marcus Whitmore for lunch. The crowd turned on Betty like a tide reversing. Whispers became accusations. She was working with his competitor. She played them both. She never loved him, she was using him the whole time. Betty stood, her hands shaking, mascara beginning to smudge. That's taken out of context. You don't understand. Marilyn's voice was steady, merciless. The context is clear, Betty. You never loved him. You used him. You fed his competitor information while planning your exit strategy. Just like Nathan used me. Betty's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face crumpled. She grabbed her clutch and pushed toward the exit, but photographers blocked her path, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. Nathan stood on the stage, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, his face ashen. The man who'd given a speech about perseverance and new beginnings now looked like he might collapse. Marilyn held the microphone, the screen still glowing behind her with the evidence of their betrayals, and waited for the chaos to settle. When it finally did, when the room fell into a breathless electric silence, She spoke one more time. You destroyed my reputation. You threw me into the street while I was in labor. You spread lies, turned people against me, made the world believe I was the problem. But I was never the problem. You were. The silence was absolute. And now, Marilyn said softly, the whole world knows it. Marilyn took the microphone one last time and looked out at the assembled crowd. Her voice was steady, final. To everyone who believed his lies, who called me unstable, who crossed the street to avoid me, who whispered about me being too much, I hope tonight taught you something. She paused, her eyes scanning the faces before her. Some looked away. Others held her gaze. The woman you discarded is the woman who now holds the power. And I will never forget who stood by me, and who stood by him. She placed the microphone down gently on the podium. The soft click amplified in the silence. Then the applause came again, but this time it was different. In the middle of the crowd, a woman with kind eyes clapped with tears streaming down her face. Nurse Thompson, still wearing her hospital ID badge. Beside her, an older man in a taxi company jacket, the driver who'd gotten Marilyn to the hospital that night. David Hawthorne stood near the stage, his applause slow and dignified, pride evident on his face. Their applause spread like ripples in water. Half the room joined, some reluctantly, others with genuine respect. The sound filled the ballroom, not for the spectacle, but for the justice. Marilyn walked down the stage steps, her midnight blue gown trailing behind her. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path. She didn't look back at Nathan, still kneeling on the stage, his face buried in his hands. She didn't look at the screens still glowing with evidence. She simply walked forward, head high, shoulders back, every step purposeful. The cool night air hit her face as she pushed through the ballroom doors. She breathed it in deeply, feeling the weight lift from her chest. Her car waited at the curb, engine purring softly, exhaust rising in the autumn air. Marilyn opened the door and slid inside. Her daughter slept peacefully in a car seat, her tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Beside her sat Mrs. Chun, the nanny Marilyn had hired, a grandmother who'd lost her own daughter and treated Marilyn's baby like her own. Marilyn closed her eyes and exhaled, long and slow. It was the first full breath she'd taken in months. She leaned over and kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the sweet baby smell of her. "We're free, baby girl," she whispered. "We're finally free." Her daughter stirred, her small mouth curving into a smile even in sleep. Marilyn stroked her soft hair, the curls so much like her own. "Your grandfather protected us. And I protected us. No one will ever make us small again." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the ballroom and its chaos behind. The city lights spread out before them, twinkling like a sky full of stars brought down to earth. Marilyn looked out the window, not backward at what she was leaving, but forward at everything that lay ahead. Marilyn Martin didn't destroy Nathan Rivera and Betty Flores. She simply revealed who they always were. She didn't rise because she sought revenge. She rose because she refused to stay buried. And in that rising, she proved that patience, strategy, and unshakable self-worth could triumph over cruelty and lies. The car turned onto a tree-lined street in a neighborhood that felt like peace. It stopped in front of a beautiful brownstone with warm light glowing from every window. Home. Real home. Marilyn lifted her sleeping daughter from the car seat, cradling her against her chest. She walked up the steps and through the front door. The house smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. She carried her daughter upstairs to a nursery decorated in soft yellows and whites, a room filled with love, not desperation. She laid her baby in a proper crib, tucking a blanket around her small body. Her daughter sighed in her sleep, content and safe. Marilyn stood by the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Nathan was trying to salvage what remained of his reputation. Somewhere, Betty was realizing that the stepping stones she'd used had crumbled beneath her feet. Somewhere, people who'd whispered about Marilyn were rethinking every assumption they'd made. "Thank you, Daddy," Marilyn whispered to the night. "For seeing what I couldn't. For protecting us when no one else would." The woman you abandon in pain may become the woman whose power you cannot escape. Some stories end with vengeance. This one ends with victory. This one ends with freedom. For every woman who's been told she's too much, you are exactly enough. If this story moved you, please subscribe. Through these stories, we build hope and give voice to those who have been silenced. Comment below and let us know, where are you watching from, and what did this story teach you? Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Marilyn Martin's story reminds us, pain can become power. Silence can become a strategy. And the woman they tried to erase can become unforgettable.